Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 30th of July of 2023. Today we have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And today, during the previous 2 days, there was a small operational pause. At least we haven't received any videos or photo confirmations of very fierce battles on the ground. The sides, either the Russians and the Ukrainians, were trying to complete the regrouping before the next offensive operation, before the next attack from the Ukrainian side. Of course, there were some clashes, there were some real clashes in the vicinity of Staromayorsk. The Russians reported that as a result of counter-offensive operation they managed to force the Ukrainians to step back, but yet we haven't received even a single video confirmation that the Russians are inside the settlement. So for now we will keep the situation as is, that Ukrainians still controls at least the northern part of that settlement. The only video we got from this area is another attempt of Ukrainian forces to attack the Russian positions, and the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainians, and they destroyed at least a few tanks in this direction in the vicinity of the road that goes from Rovnopol to Staromayorsk, using the TOW weapon anti-tank missiles, anti-tank equipment. When talking about Zaporozhye area, or about Orekhov, Bradley Square, Orekhov area and so on, we haven't received any videos from this bridgehead at all. Just thing that we got is that the Ukrainian sources started reporting that the Russians, it's completely according to Ukrainian sources, we haven't received such confirmation or any video or anything like that from the Russian sources, but the Ukrainians saying that the Russians found a solution how to suppress Starlinks. And this is of course a very big problem for the Ukrainians, because most of their technologies, most of their weapon and most of their tactics and success that they managed to achieve in the past was completely based on the ability to get access to the internet, to the Starlink and to internet, to get operational information, to get understanding of the situation and so on. And currently the Russians haven't started the production of that type of weapon, electronic warfare, massively. There are just few test objects on the ground, on the combat line, but as I understand, within the next few months the Russians will complete the preparation of massive building of such a technology, of such a weapon. Then we'll see what is going to be next. The Ukrainian sources published the video how they were attacking and how they continue tracking and hunting the Russian armored vehicles in the south in direction of Robotyne. This is the only video we got from this area when the Ukrainians managed to discover and to geolocate the Russian track that probably was moving the infantry, and then as a result of drone attack the Ukrainians managed to damage or at least to destroy that track, maybe with munition, maybe with the Russian soldiers. The Russian sources reported that during the previous 2 days there was rainy weather in this sector, in this area, and the Ukrainians was trying to regroup, and currently the Russians reported at least at noontime of the 30th of July that Ukrainians completed the regrouping, and also they reported somewhere at 7 p.m. of the local time that they spotted and discovered the movements of the Ukrainian forces between the fields. So as I understand, probably there is a very high chances that upcoming night from the 30th on the 31st of July the Ukrainians will make another attempt to attack and will continue their developing of their and stretching of the Russian defense orders and developing of their bridgehead. Of course, there are a lot of solutions where the Ukrainians can attack in direction of Verbova, in direction of the south of Robotyne, and so on. Lots of possibilities for the Ukrainian army, so we'll see. But if those 2 days there was bad weather, of course it's better to stick to the roads and to stick to probably in direction of Verbova. So anyway, we'll see. Some updates are coming. We received from Petykhatki. The Russians managed to discover the Russian T-90 squad, T-90 tank, managed to discover the Ukrainian position in that settlement, and after this tank was navigated, the Russians destroyed the Ukrainian position. The interesting thing from this video is that this settlement is under complete Ukrainian control. According to this video, as you can see, the Ukrainians were moving across through the city and they didn't feel any danger from the Russian side. This is the interesting thing that probably I was wondering most of all, because the Russian sources reported that Ukrainians can't move through the this settlement without being attacked by the Russian forces. So as you can see currently, according to this video, we see that Ukrainians control the settlement for 100%, and before the next video we will update the map showing that this territory is under complete Ukrainian control. Now we are moving to Vremivka, to South Donetsk area. One more time, the Ukrainians published another video how they managed to discover and destroy Russian air defense system. On this video, we see that there are two equipments. The author of this video claims that Ukrainians managed to destroy Buk-M3, but the Russian specialist military experts reported that that was Buk-M2 and the radar to this system. The Ukrainians managed to discover the Russian air defense system with drone. As you can see, the Russians couldn't see the Ukrainian drone above that system, and after that, the HIMARS weapon destroyed that drone. The Russians reported that they have redeployed significant number of Ka52 helicopters in the vicinity of Vremivka tactical bridgehead, and for today we got at least 2 videos from this area, how the Russians were hunting and attacking the Ukrainian armored vehicles exactly on the South Donetsk and Zaporozhye area. And this is the video of some helicopters in this area from the side. We see that helicopters are flying on the very low level of the land, and after that they're making a shot, turns back, and then helicopters return back to the bases. So the number of helicopters on this bridgehead means that Ukrainians will continue offensive operation in this area. They have collected significant number of armored vehicles. As you can see in this video, it was like a helicopter pairs, one helicopter attack, then he returned back, and the second helicopter attack after the first one. So as you can see, there is a massive number of helicopters of Ka52. Probably the Russians understand the risks and the value of this bridgehead and the purposes of the Ukrainians and the number, the most important, of Ukrainian armored vehicles in this area. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area, the Russians managed to discover and to destroy 250 Ukrainian soldiers, 8 armored vehicles including 1 tank, and 2 artillery systems. During the previous 24 hours, according to the Russian sources, they repelled just 1 single attack on this entire bridgehead, and mainly because of rainy weather and that Ukrainians were trying to complete the regrouping process in the Zaporozhye direction. Now we're moving to Donetsk area, and today we got more very interesting videos from Krasnohorivka, from this bridgehead. The first video we got from Marinka. The Ukrainians published the video how they managed to discover and to attack and probably to destroy the Russian armored vehicle inside of Marinka, or even tank. He was damaged, and as you can see, then they got a smoke from that tank, and probably the Russians were forced to waste that tank and to abandon those positions. Very interesting updates are coming from Krasnohorivka, from this settlement, and as we can see, the Russians currently are very focused against this settlement. During the previous week, we got at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 geolocated videos how the Russians were trying to bomb and attack the Ukrainian positions. And as you can see, the most concentrated area is the industrial zone in the central part of Krasnohorivka, this area. This is the Ukrainian fire positions, this is the Ukrainian anti-tank positions. The Russians know perfectly exactly where the Ukrainians are concentrated, and currently the Russians are trying to shut down and to destroy as much as possible Ukrainian positions. You see that this is probably the highest area in this settlement that Ukrainians use to control the southern area, and to be more precise, the area in the vicinity of the coal mine. So we see on the beginning of that video the building that the Russian drone attacked, that was the position, or even some reconnaissance position of the Ukrainians. On another video we got the video a little bit to the right from that area, this one. And the Russians also discovered another Ukrainian position on the building, on the roof of the building. Maybe that was a sniper position, or the author of this video claims that this is the position of Ukrainian anti-tank weapon Stugna. The Russians discovered and also destroyed. So basically, currently the Russians are trying to suppress anti-tank forces, reconnaissance teams, and so on. And the concentration of Russian fire against the settlement tells me, at least, I can make a conclusion that the Russians are planning to start offensive operation in this direction. They're planning to start storming of this settlement, but for now, first they need to suppress. And from these big buildings, the Ukrainians can easily control any movements in the south. And the only possible solution for the Russians, as they they did with the coal mine is to attack the settlement by trying to cross these fields with the armored fist, and this is the only way how the Russians can penetrate and to get inside of the residential area to the south. And of course, from these buildings, the Ukrainians will be able to destroy every single tank that they will head in direction of this small settlement on the west of Donetsk. Now we're moving further, and now we're going to talk about Klishchiivka, about this area, about the battle of Klishchiivka, about the battle of Andreevka and this bridgehead as well. So today we got a lot of updates from this territory, and currently, according to my understanding, this is the most important area for the Ukrainians. The Klishchiivka and Bakhmut, Artyomovsk is much more important in comparison with the Zaporozhye area and Bradley Square and so on, because the Ukrainians are completely concentrated. The Ukrainians have accumulated the most powerful drone forces in this area. The Ukrainians have accumulated the most powerful stormtroopers in this area. There are, I'll remind you, Lut Assault Brigade, 5th Assault Brigade, 24th Separate Battalion, Aidar, 22nd Mechanized, 5th Assault, 80th Assault Brigade, 3rd Assault Brigade. They're most powerful drone forces. There are very big numbers, significant number of artillery systems. And just for today, we got a lot of videos how the Ukrainians were trying to attack and destroy the Russian artillery systems behind Klishchiivka, and all these videos with the icon of rounds shows us the results of Ukrainian counter-artillery duels. And to tell the truth, as I can see according to the videos, a number of reports, geolocated reports that we received from this bridgehead, the Ukrainians managed to suppress the Russian artillery system, and currently the Ukrainians are winning this battle of counter-artillery duels. For example, on all these videos, we can see how the Russians managed to destroy few Akatsiya in this area. The Ukrainians destroyed the Russian Grad system, the Russian radar system, and so on. So they're doing and try to complete very successful artillery duels. Furthermore, the Russian sources, the Ukrainian sources published the video how they managed to track and discover another Russian armored vehicle that was heading in direction of Klishchiivka. Probably the Russians were trying to redeploy some manpower or munition or maybe infantry or forces with the personal carrier, but the Ukrainians discovered and destroyed. Furthermore, the Ukrainians published the first video, and as you can see, I have updated the map about Klishchiivka. This is the video how the Ukrainians were trying to clear the water pump station in the southern western part of Klishchiivka, of that settlement. So this video is geolocated. The Ukrainians managed to enter these buildings. They managed to clear this area and probably establish 100% control over this territory. Furthermore, in the most probably interesting situation, if we will try to increase the range of events that we got from this bridgehead, let's say from the 23rd of July for a week, we're gonna see the real map of events and geolocations events. As you can see, the Ukrainians are 100% completely concentrated in this area. Every single blue icon means the Ukrainian attack or bomb, or attack with a drone, or attack with artillery, or another destroyed Russian artillery system. As you can see, the Ukrainians have suppressed everything from the Russian side in this area. It is a very difficult and critical situation for the Russians. We haven't received any updates about any attacks, let's say, on the northern flank of Klishchiivka, but I expect that within the next 24-48 hours, the Russians will continue their offensive operation. And if we will split and cut this small territory into small pieces, as I see, the biggest value, the settlement by the name of Andreevka has the biggest value for the Ukrainians, and currently they're focused in this area. We just got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 icons, 5 events from this area. So basically the Ukrainians are planning first to penetrate this area, and after that they will try to develop their offensive operation behind the Russian forces in Klishchiivka. When talking about the Russian concentration, we see that no matter the situation in Klishchiivka, the Russians are trying to concentrate their focus in the vicinity of Grigorievka, Berkhovka, Kalinovka, Yagidne, and Dubovo-Vasilievka and Bogdanovka, in this area, in the central part, in Ivanovska, and so on. And just when talking about today, we haven't received nothing from the Russians in this area, but the previous week the Russians were concentrated in the central part, trying not to allow the Ukrainians to create a powerful and successful counteroffensive operation from Grigorievka in direction of Dubovo-Vasilievka and from, let's say, Bogdanovka in direction of Berkhovka. So all the previous attempts were repelled, and also the Russian concentration of fire in this area can also mean that maybe the Russians have their own plans to launch a counteroffensive operation in this area. And the question is whether the Ukrainians are going to be faster with the southern operation or the Russians will be faster on the north. And who will be the faster will win the battle of Artyomovsk or Bakhmut bridgehead. Now let's move to the northern area. As we can see, there is also some concentration of icons, and the most important clashes are coming from the area between Sakov and Seti-Razdolovka, and the Ukrainians made few attempts to attack, but this is a very difficult bridgehead to attack because there are a lot of rivers, and the rivers are not straight. They're like a snake and so on, and it's very difficult to find a solution where to attack. The Ukrainians are trying to redeploy their forces from one side to another. The Russians see everything, and the Russians attack and bomb the Ukrainians during the movements of their forces. During this day, we haven't received any updates from this bridgehead. The Ministry of Defense of Russian Federation reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area, the Ukrainians lost 190 soldiers, 6 armored vehicles, and 4 artillery systems. Furthermore, the Russians added that they managed to repel 7 attacks of Ukrainian forces in this area. And now we're moving further, and we're going to talk about Bilogorovka. The Russians continue bombing and shelling this settlement, and on this video we see how the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian position, the Ukrainian tanks, and during the artillery battles they managed to destroy 2 tanks and around 12 Ukrainian soldiers on this bridgehead. But yet this bridgehead, this territory still remains under Ukrainian control. No matter the losses, of course. And when talking about Lyman front line, the Russians continue their offensive operation, but also we can see small operational posts and regrouping. The Ukrainians lost 140 soldiers during the previous day and 5 armored vehicles and 1 artillery system, and the Russians managed to repel at least 3 attacks of the Ukrainian forces. We haven't received even a single video from this bridgehead, which also confirms a small pause in this area. Maybe there were some video, I believe there were, but most of them are not geolocated, and it's very difficult to understand whether this video took place in the south or today or maybe a week ago or months or something like this. When talking about Kupiansk front line, the Russians continue offensive operation in the vicinity of Kislovka, in the vicinity of Novoselovska, Kuzyumovka, and so on. The Ukrainians published the video how they attacked the Russian positions, the Russian ammo depot behind the main direction of attack, in direction of Novoselovka, that the Russians were using for supporting their forces during the previous week offensive operation, probably upcoming. The Ministry of Defense reported that as a result of fierce fightings in this area, the Ukrainians lost 80 soldiers. So the level of losses is very heavy in comparison even with the previous day, when the Ukrainians lost just 20 soldiers. And the final area we're going to talk about is Kherson area. The Ukrainians published the video how they discovered and destroyed the Russian radar on the Russian side of Inaleshki settlement. And this radar, this is counter artillery systems radar, and probably there was also cameras that the Russians were using to track and to see the situation on the opposite bank. And also the Russians published the video how they continue bombing and shelling the bridgehead at Antonov Bridge, which means which confirms that there are still Ukrainians, and probably the Ukrainians continue sending more and more infantry to this bank of the river to create probably critical mass, and after that the Ukrainians will try to make more attempts to in direction of Aleshki. Furthermore, the Russian sources reported that like 99% that Ukrainians will try to cross it, will try to bypass Dnieper river and will try to create a landing operation of the Russian side of Dnieper river in Kherson direction. So maybe this is exactly what is going to happen, because the Ministry of Defense report also added that as a result of artillery duels, as a result of the process of discovering of Ukrainian position along the Dnieper river, the Ukrainians lost 65 soldiers and 5 armored vehicles. As you can see, the level of losses is very heavy. Furthermore, the sources today reported that the United Kingdom currently try to prepare around 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers, and the main purpose of those special forces is to capture Crimea. Of course, it's hard to believe that 2,000 soldiers are able to capture the entire area, the entire Crimea, but as I understand, there's going to be the soldiers. The main purpose of them is to capture the radio station, the logistic hubs, so just the small buildings, just the small important areas, maybe in the vicinity of Crimea Bridge, to capture some infrastructure and to cut finally the connection between Russia and mainland and Crimea and so on. And meanwhile, the rest of the forces, the thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, will try to fight on the ground, while those 2,000 will try to capture Crimea. Very interesting updates continue coming from Belarus, from the border. As you know, that the Russians have already redeployed significant number of Wagner forces in the vicinity of Grodno, in the area between the Kaliningrad Russian district and the Belarus, and the Belarusians have redeployed the Wagner forces. And today we got another video, another photo of Wagner camp in Mogilov district. This is the camp. And during the previous week, the 12th convoy of Wagner forces have been redeployed on the territory of Belarus. Currently, the number of Wagner forces is unknown that were redeployed on the territory of Belarus, but as I understand, there are going to be more and more Wagner forces to be redeployed on the territory of Republic of Belarus, and probably they will be redeployed to the western border, and probably maybe this summer we're going to see some provocation on the western border between the Wagner forces and the Polish main army. Also, as we discussed during the previous night, the Russians made massive attack against Sumy, and as a result of that attack, the Russians destroyed the Sumy Artillery High School, and probably lots of soldiers, lots of officers, artillery officers were killed as a result of that attack. And also we have another video on the border with Belarus, with Russia. In the Sumy region, the Russians managed to discover the Ukrainian positions in the forest, and after artillery strike, they destroyed the Ukrainian positions in that forest. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.